Will the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro with AMD Ryzen 6800U compare well with the GPD WIN MAX 2? Let's find out as we unbox, overview, benchmark and finish up with some games and emulator tests. Inside the box we have the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro handheld. We will show it in more detail shortly. Underneath is a user guide which is in Chinese and English languages. Inside the cardboard box is a USB charger and USB Type-C charge cable. We will include the correct adapter for your country. The ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro measures 4.9 by 4.17 by 0.90 inches and weighs 599 grams. The 7-inch IPS touchscreen has a native resolution of 1920 by 1200. It has good levels of brightness and the colours look great. Not as great as an OLED, but still very good. You have your usual gaming controls including Hall sensor analog sticks, D-pad and buttons. There are additional buttons in the bottom corners of the screen to show the desktop, toggle the on-screen keyboard and bring up the ONEXPLAYER Overlay app. The top of the Mini Pro has dual shoulder and linear trigger buttons. There are the power, volume buttons and 3.5mm headphone port. The USB Type-C 4 can be used for charging or connect peripherals to such as an eGPU. There is also a USB Type-A 3.0 port. The bottom has a USB Type-C port which can also be used for charging or connecting peripherals such as the ONEXPLAYER Mini dock. We will show the dock in more detail on a separate short video. On both sides there are LED lights which can be configured in the included software. The ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro has the AMD Ryzen 6800U processor with 8 cores and 16 threads running up to 4.7 GHz with a recommended maximum TDP of 28 watts. It features the Radeon 680M graphics. There's a choice of two configurations. The first with 16 or 32 gigs of LPDDR5 6400 MHz RAM and 1 or 2 TB of M.2 2280 NVMe storage. For connectivity there is fast Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.0. It runs on a 48-hour watt battery and in our test we left it sitting idle at 28 watts TDP and got a time of 4 hours 48 minutes. And with Cinebench running on a loop we got just 1 hour 12 minutes. Do remember that this is at full CPU load on the highest officially supported TDP. While running Cinebench we measured a highest temperature of 52 degrees and highest fan noise of 68 decibels. By pressing the ONEXPLAYER on the bottom right you bring up an overlay which you can easily access at any time including whilst playing games. From here you can quickly and easily change the TDP, vibration, screen resolution, the LED light patterns, screen brightness and volume. It's very useful and definitely a welcome addition to the ONEXPLAYER handhelds. For the system benchmarks we have the 16 and 32 gig models as well as our recently reviewed GPD WIN MAX 2. In our PCMark benchmark we got overall scores of 6414 and 6401 for the 32 gig and 16 gig models respectively. There's barely any difference in performance here which is good to see. For 3D Mark in the Time Spy test we got scores of 2748 and 2744. For Firestrike we get 6589 and 6591. And for Night Raid we get scores of 22,484 and 23,466. There's a bit of a noticeable difference of 4% on Night Raid, but considering it's the only one so far we could run the benchmarks again and get similar scores. For our final benchmark we are running Cinebench which tests the CPU single core and multi-core performance. On the multi-core benchmark we get scores of 11,357 and 11,130. For our gaming benchmarks we have changed our testing formats. From now on we will be testing at 800p at 28 watts, as well as 11, 20 and 28 watts at the device's native resolution. This way we can compare different handhelds at a common shared resolution of 800p to spot any performance differences. The native resolutions vary between handhelds and this will tell us what the performance would be at different TDPs for the specific product. We are also retiring Street Fighter V and Final Fantasy XIV benchmarks, as the games are quite old now. We are including Cyberpunk and Modern Warfare 2 in our new benchmarks going forward. The benchmark scores for both models were pretty much on par with each other, so we will run the games benchmarks on the 32GB 2TB model only. We are running the Forza Horizon 5 benchmark on the very low settings. The results are on screen with 1200p resolution at 28 watts, getting a very playable 92 frames per second. At 800p with the same settings, we get a massive 122 FPS, which is great. As we lower the TDPs at 1200p resolution, we get 85 frames per second at 20 watts, and quite a drop at 11 watts with 49 FPS. Despite the game getting on a bit now, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is still great for benchmarks as it remains a demanding game. At 28 watts 1200p resolution on the lowest graphic settings, we get a very playable 69 FPS, and at 800p we get an amazing 97 FPS. At 1200p on 20 watts TDP we get 61, and at 11 watts we got 34 frames per second. For our Cyberpunk 2077 benchmarks, we are running on the default low graphics and texture settings. At 1200p with 28 watts TDP, we get an average frame rate of 52.68, and at 800p we get 75.68 frames per second. For 1200p at 20 watts we got 44.83, and at 11 watts we got 23.13 frames per second. We are running Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on the default minimal graphic settings with no upscaling. At 1200p at 28 watts we get an average frame rate of 64, and at 800p we get 94 frames per second. At 20 watts we got a not far off from 28 watts of 58 FPS, and at 11 watts we got 32 FPS. We are first showing a summary of the benchmark results across the different TDP. The 32 and 16GB models are essentially the same, so we don't need to worry too much about performance differences. We can see a large difference in performance between 11 watts and 20 watts TDP, but when increasing to 28 watts there is relatively smaller difference. The Ryzen 7 processor is a bit power hungry in this regard, and combined with the battery it does mean gaming sessions can be short when running at 28 watts TDP. You can run at around 25 watts for the best performance and battery life balance, but ideally you want the TDP to be as low as possible. Next, we are comparing the benchmark results with the GPD WIN MAX 2 and the pre-production sample of the AOKZOE A1. Please remember that the A1 benchmark results are not based on final hardware and should only be used as a reference. Overall, the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro comes out roughly in the middle of the other two. We could run all the benchmarks multiple times and get different scores, but generally there's not a massive difference in performance between the three. This is good for us as it helps to make the decision what to buy not based on the best performance but on the design, screen size and so on. We will now try some games at playable graphics levels. When possible, we have chosen the 1200p resolution at 28 watts TDP for the best settings, and 800p at the lowest playable TDP for best battery life. We know that Forza Horizon 5 runs great on AMD CPUs, so we can run this at 1200p on the very low settings no problem. You can increase the graphics settings to a medium-high mix and keep it mostly over 60 FPS, or lower it to 800p resolution and play it on the very low settings at just 11 watts TDP, which is amazing. For Overwatch 2 we are aiming for a stable 60 FPS at 1200p. At 28 watts TDP we can go up to the high settings with no upscaling, and for the most part we get 60 FPS. If you want to conserve some battery life then you can go to 800p resolution at 11 watts with low graphic settings. We couldn't get Metal Hellsinger running well at 60 FPS at 1200p resolution, so we dropped it down to 800, which gave us some more breathing space. You can run it on the low settings to keep it above 60 FPS, or bump it up to medium graphics for some occasional dips below 60. Personally, I would go for the low settings as it can mess up your timing if there's a bit of lag. For the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 campaign, we are using the minimal graphics settings at 1200p resolution, and we were getting frame rates between 30 and 60. So we have gone with 800p at 28 watts, balanced graphics, which gets us above 60 FPS. You can lower the TDP to around 15 watts and lower the graphics to minimal to save battery. For multiplayer, you will likely want to run at 28 watts 800p on minimal graphics for the highest FPS to get your kills in faster. Emulation performance is overall very similar to the GPD WIN MAX 2 that we recently reviewed. For compatible games, you will see decent performance on Xemu. Our go-to game Mashed gets a solid 60 FPS. Not all games run great though, so your mileage may vary. For the Citra emulator, we see mixed performance. Games such as Sonic Generations have the initial shader cache lags, whilst other games such as Ridge Racer 3D will run mostly fine. For compatible games on Xenia, there is some decent performance, but the emulator is not quite there yet for perfect gameplay. On Sonic Racing, we get the full 30 FPS for the most part, but there are graphics glitches. Other games, such as Project Gotham Racing, are hovering in the mid 20 frames per second area. PlayStation 3 is getting to the point where many games are playable now. On Wipeout HD, we are getting mostly high 50 to 60 FPS with some minor lags. On Tekken 6, apart from some occasional shader caching lags during the level intro, the game runs at a solid 60 FPS. For Yuzu, we are using the Vulcan build and are getting decent results. Cruising Blast is running at higher 50s to 60s with some minor lags now and again. Other games' performance and compatibility varies, so not everything works, but there are a decent number of playable games. The ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro for me is a massive step up from the previous generation. If we think back to a year ago, we were struggling to run many of the latest games at enjoyable settings. Now we can load up a game and not worry too much about tweaking and optimising. However, we still do have to worry about battery life. Just over 1 hour on full load at 28 watts TDP is not great. If you are playing highly demanding games whilst out and about and you are not near a power supply, you may have to go back to tweaking and optimising games. The Mini Pro is just the right size for a handheld. It is comfortable to game on for extended periods of time, the controls are within easy reach and not too cramped together. The screen size for me is spot on. At 1200p resolution, games look very good and there's enough screen to see text without any issues. Also, bonus points for the ONEXPLAYER overlay. It works great and makes performing commonly used functions far faster to complete. Game and emulator performance is very good. The AMD 6800G processor opens up far more options for increased performance across games. That can mean anything from cranking up the graphics settings on older games to running newly released games that are actually playable. We still have the GPD WIN 4 and the Iron EO2 to come, but we would expect the performance to be around the same as the three devices mentioned today. Will you buy the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro or something else? Let us know in the comments. Talking about buying one, you can learn more about the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro and order yours now at DroiX.co.uk or DroiX.net for worldwide shipping. Use the discount code OXPMP5 on the checkout for a discount. Keep an eye out for our next video where we will be reviewing the Minis Forum NUCX i7 Gaming Mini PC with GeForce 3070 inside. We can't wait to try it. That wraps up our review of the ONEXPLAYER Mini Pro. We hope you have found it useful. Thanks for watching and we hope to see you back in the next video.